Am I the host now? I don't see.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And everything. So, hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. For the faces I do know and the names I do know, nice to see you again. For those who I am not aware of, my name is Roshell Hanse. I am a licensed associate professional counselor, a national certified counselor, as well as a certified trauma counselor, trauma professional in the state of Georgia. And tonight I wanted to present on empowering Black women. But the focus really is not what you're going to think. And that is constantly my MO of you think you're coming to talk about one specific dynamic, but we're really going to open you up in many different ways. And so before we get into it, if everyone please can get a paper and some sort of writing utensil, if possible, because there are going to be some interactive components throughout the presentation. So I'll give you some time to go ahead and do that. So the purpose of the presentation tonight, you're going to gain some knowledge, you are going to learn some skills, and we are going to implement some awareness. I like acronyms, so if you look backward, it's ASK, so you remember of what the purpose of this presentation. The focus of the presentation is to be more intentional, therefore creating effective change. And that's what I meant by shifting it slightly. When you saw empowering Black women, it's like, okay, well, what are we talking about? It's more about the intentionality of being a woman, being a person, being an individual, being a clinician, and recognizing how to create effective change, not only for yourself, but hopefully for those you look to serve in your population and community. So the first thing that I want to do, and I hope everyone is back with their pens and papers if they went and got that, I'm going to implement a dynamic to help you be more present. And so if you can just follow along exactly with what you hear through this audio, and then we will go forward.
Welcome to this session where we'll be discussing how to ride the waves of change. Start by taking a comfortable posture, sitting upright in a way that's not too relaxed or too tight. Close your eyes. Soften your whole body. Let go of any thoughts or concerns you're holding. Do your best to allow yourself to become present. Now gently come to the breath, focusing on the natural breath as an anchor, establishing your awareness here. Enjoy each new breath. Allow it to guide you into a relaxed, present state. Each breath offering a focus, something to keep returning back to. Now shift your focus from the breath to the body, scanning the head and face and focusing on this area. Observe the forehead and temples. And let any tension in the mouth and jaw melt away. And then extend that awareness down your neck, all the way into the shoulders, noticing any sensation here, tightness or contraction, warmth or coolness, and just allowing for whatever is in our experience. And then extend your focus down the arms, just resting the arms in an effortless way. Move your focus down through the wrists, hands, and fingers. And observe any tingling, itchiness, pressure, or pulsing. Objectively observing any sensations without judgment or reactivity. And now focus your attention on the chest, filling the chest up with air, and then letting go, letting go, letting go. Soften your belly, noticing any softness or emotion or tightness. And then tuning into the area of your back, noticing what's here. We're not trying to change anything. We're not making anything we experience wrong. We're simply noticing. Feeling into the area of the pelvis now, and noticing where your body makes contact with your cushion or chair. And exhaling the breath down the legs, through the knees, feeling any heaviness or lightness, warmth or coolness. And directing your focus down to your feet, all the way into the tips of your toes. And now, for these last few breaths, just feeling into the whole body, accepting everything in your experience, observing everything with non-judgmental awareness, resisting nothing. Now relax your attention. Relax the body. Today we'll be talking about how to ride the waves of change. Life changes, often quickly. We can wake one morning to a world unrecognizable from yesterday. A relationship ends, a job begins, and without warning, the path we had so carefully chosen takes us in a new and uncertain direction. Our instinct is to resist the unknown, to protect ourselves from change and instability. But fighting change is futile. It's all around us, continual and unavoidable. As Bob Dylan said, there is nothing so stable as change. So rather than struggling for control, why not stop long enough to ask, what would it be like to loosen our grip? What if we let go of our agenda and learned bit by bit to get comfortable with uncertainty? We just might find a new rhythm that allows us to flow with the current rather than fighting it. I invite you to take one final breath now and set an intention to practice letting go in moments where you catch yourself resisting uncertainty. See if you can get just a little more comfortable riding the waves of change and experience life with more grace and ease. Now gently, notice the areas of your body that make contact with the floor or your chair. Bring your attention back to the room and open your eyes.
So, hopefully, you are more present and in the moment. I know it's like, why am I starting out this meditation or this presentation with a meditation? It's very connected to intentionality. It takes patience and it takes practice to be intentional. A lot of you are probably coming from class, getting off of work, doing different dynamics, and that breaks down your intentionality in different ways because you're moving and shaking so fast that you're not able to really recognize what's going on inside of you or necessarily around you that can be creating an impact. And so I like to start out anything that I'm doing to really help reinforce the concept of intentionality through meditation. Also, oftentimes I've recognized that we preach it to our clients, but we do not practice it ourselves. And so that is another form of being intentional about with your words and your hopes for your clients. And so if everyone for me can take this second now and check in, if you will, on this wheel with how you're feeling right now. Oftentimes what we do is we lump our emotions in the day and lose sight of the actual moments. And that was another reinforcer of the meditation, is to help you figure out how you are right now at 7:20 p.m. versus 7 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or even later on to come. Figure out, if you can, on this wheel, what emotion you are feeling right now in this moment, and write that down as your check-in feeling. If you're not aware of this wheel, the middle are the core emotions that oftentimes we default to. So we'll say, I'm mad, when really we're probably frustrated. That disconnect doesn't help you recognize the intensity that has changed. So mad is a little bit more intense than frustrated. And when you're intentional in understanding your emotions, you can be more intentional in creating effective change. This also is important because as women, we are often represented as either overly emotional or emotionally reactive. Especially as Black women, we're often misrepresented as angry when we're really struggling with other emotions such as anxiety, particularly, or other uncomfortable emotions. And so I want to give you some time to look through the wheel. Generally, it's best to try to identify from the default emotions in the center and then get more descriptive as you go out. And so I don't see everyone's faces. I do see some. So I see some are looking still. So I'll leave it up there a little bit longer. Okay. The anger iceberg. Can you identify for yourself underlying emotions that are often misrepresented as anger for you? And again, the reason why this is important is because anger is usually a more dominant emotion shown because we struggle to be vulnerable and not only express, but understand our true emotions that occur prior to anger. Anger is known as the secondary emotion, but these underlying emotions are your actual primary emotions. And so it's best if you can try to identify for yourself what are some of these emotions underneath that you often find yourself struggling with and then showing up as angry. This often can occur because in some families, being angry is more appropriate to show than, as I stated, being vulnerable. And not only in families, but also in friend groups and other dynamics, even for yourself. Sometimes we struggle to look ourselves in the mirror and acknowledge what's really going on and suppress it, which then creates the source of anger for us. What I like to do with feelings is not lump them together. Even though many emotions can exist at the same time, it's important to try to figure out what is the core or strongest emotion at the time. Therefore, you can be intentional about creating the skills, interventions, or coping mechanisms to help decrease that emotional reactivity. So, what I have recognized with my clients and a lot of patterns in communicating with other people are what I identify as the 8 no words. And so before I tell you what those 8 no words are, I would like for you to try to guess them. Write them down on your paper, what you think they are. And as a hint, I will let you know that they are either very vague, very rigid, and lack the concept of intentionality. There is no specific answer that you have to look for outside of what I'm going to show you, so don't worry about what you put down on your paper. Remember, they're vague, rigid, and lack intentionality. Another reason for that meditation, as it talked about the wave of change and letting go, when I show you these 8 words, it is going to be helping you reframe a lot of the dynamics that you so often use and probably are not aware of. Right, we ready? So the first we have are good and bad. Then we have right and wrong. Then we have always and never. And then we have perfect and normal. So we often speak without intention, which creates miscommunication and reinforces misunderstanding, not only in ourselves, but in those we try to communicate with. So for instance, when we talk about the vague description of good and bad, the reason why I didn't use the word bad when I said there is no bad way to write down what you're going to write or wrong way to write it down is because I don't know what you put down on your paper. There's a reason why you put that down on your paper. And if I tell you that it's good or it's bad or it's right or it's wrong, I'm then creating a basis and not allowing you to identify your space of your thoughts. And it doesn't help you gain more clarity into where your thinking patterns are even coming from. Then I become the dominant person that you look to for answers instead of looking to yourself. It doesn't allow you to get any insight into what's really happening with the person. When we do also in the right or the wrong, it's very black and white. There is no gray area to see a middle to understand the perception of somebody else. When we say always and never, we lack the concept of there probably was one time, even if it was far and few between, where something or an experience occurred, but because we're so used to going into this always and never concept, we're losing sight of that. And then with the perfect and the normal, this one I really enjoy. I give an example. For instance, I come into your house and I say, by the time I come back, I want the house to be perfect. Do you know what I've asked you to do? Oftentimes, no. But we're not going to ask what it is. We're going to go rampant crazy around trying to clean everything. And then we're going to feel so proud of ourselves because we're like, wonderful, the house is clean. When this person comes back, it's perfect. And I come back in and I'm like, hey, what's up? Like, this, it's not perfect. And you're like, what do you mean? I went from top to bottom. But I wanted you to wash the dishes and clean the bookshelf. You did everything else but those two factors. Do you see how that vague description now is creating miscommunication between us? And now we're going into emotional reactivity because now you're probably going to be frustrated, upset, discouraged. And then going forward, you're going to probably create some belief systems around the concept of cleaning or when I ask you to do something. Going back to the description of good and bad, oftentimes I hear people say, how are you? Oh, I'm good. What does that mean? I have no idea how you are, and you have no idea how you are. So that's another reason why I use the feelings wheel, because oftentimes when I press people more, they're like, oh, I'm anxious. Oh, I'm a little frustrated. Oh, and that's good. So then we would have kept moving in a dynamic, not creating awareness to the true emotions that are really going on. So I like to use more descriptive and intentional words to describe not only my experience, but what's going on inside of me. So can you think of a time when you used any of these words and begin to reflect on how they increased miscommunication? I know starting out, I was listening to two people talk about a book and they were like, oh, it's a really good book. What does that mean? Is it effective? Is it beneficial? Give yourself more context so you and the other person can have more clarity. As I told you guys in the beginning, I love a good acronym. It's so helpful for my brain, especially trying to remember a lot of information at one time. And so, how do you overcome struggles that are occurring? I created dirt, rain, and air. So dirt, be mindful of dirt. And this is what we tend to struggle with: distortions, insecurities, rejection, and triggers. When we talk about distortions, that's cognitive distortions. So what are you thinking in those moments of distress or experiences that are uncomfortable? So again, going back to the cleaning example, Man, I did everything I could. This person doesn't ever think that I do the best that I can with cleaning up. Then we talk about insecurities. How are you feeling in that moment? Are you discouraged? Are you upset? Do you then start to internalize, as we go into rejection, these insecurities, and then take this on as your belief system about yourself, which then leads to triggers? So what beliefs are you reinforcing? Every time this person asks me to clean up, it's going to be the same struggle. They're not going to understand, or I'm not going to understand what they're asking me to do or how to go about it. So you want to be mindful of the dirt. And this is what we as individuals tend to struggle with: our distortions, our insecurities, our rejections, and our triggers. Be mindful of rainstorms. This is what we need to look out for: our reactions, the attention, implications, and needs. How are you reacting to a situation? Are you allowing yourself to get emotionally reactive, get upset, yell, scream, cry, whatever it may be, break things? What attention are you giving to it? Are you focusing on something that can be considered a negative, or are you trying to allow yourself to focus on what the other person is doing, which you have no control over? Then we talk about implications, and that's: what are you assuming? What are you believing about this situation and yourself? Then we talk about the needs. What have you deemed a necessity? So this has to be this way. I have to get my point across. When you start hearing those have tos and musts, that means that you're creating a space of force, and that's going to create distress for you. So you want to be mindful of your rainstorms. How do we overcome? You learn to create fresh air. That's awareness, intentionality, and reframe. How can you be more mindful in situations about not only yourself, but the experience that's occurring? How can you create more intentions? Be more specific. So, as I said, not only in your language, but in your actions, your behaviors, and your thoughts, as well as your emotions. Reframing. How can you look at your experience differently? And that goes back to making sure you don't fall victim to those 8 no words. Allowing yourself to take a step back and don't just say, oh, it was a good day, like, but you know what I mean. No, I don't. Take the time to slow down and say the more intentional reframe. Speak with clarity. And oftentimes we're moving so fast, it's like, but you know what I mean. It doesn't matter if I know, because now you're making me assume, and that's going to create possibly miscommunication. Can you reflect back on a situation where you lacked the ability to create fresh air? Your feelings check out. What emotion do you feel checking out of this session? What did you learn in this session that stood out the most to you? How do you plan to utilize the information learned from today's session in your daily practice? And I'll give some time before I go to the last one. Any questions, comments, or concerns that want to be expressed, I would love to hear it. And also let you know that you can follow me on my Instagram at Ask Roshell, where I provide a lot more of these concepts and daily reminders for you to live a healthier, well-balanced life, not only for yourself, but that you can also teach to your clients. I will stop sharing. Any feedback?
Well, that was totally amazing. Absolutely. And I knew it would be. And I got to tell you, during that whole process, I was slowing down and I was working to be intentional. So I wrote everything down. And it's really funny. Right before here, I'm doing a presentation and I'm hyper, I'm everywhere. And so hopefully when I go back to the presentation, I'll be calmer because this is great work. Thank you so much. And I'm going to check you out on Instagram because I can need this daily. Thank you so much. So relevant, so important. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Kelly, I see your hand.
Hi. So with the emotion wheel, is it a trend? So if you start with peaceful, you go to content, you go to relax, can you move around the wheel or you have to stay in that grid?
No, many emotions can exist at the same time, but what I encourage clients to do is to identify the emotion that's the strongest. So you can list them all out if that helps you, but you want to identify what emotion is the strongest or loudest right now in this moment. Because oftentimes if we're having many emotions, it's because we're thinking about many areas of the day versus still sitting still in this one moment right here, right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, feedback?
Well, I was thinking, Rochelle, you made me think of this idea of intentionality of language and being mindful of when I get lazy with language and what that says about how I'm keeping things superficial. And is that a way to manage self that isn't so useful in the long run?
And even as you express that, getting lazy, then what do you expect the dynamic with the other person to look like?
Without a doubt.
Probably going to be some tension, some laziness, some lack of connection. And regardless of who the other person is, that could create more distress, maybe on you as you're trying to build a dynamic with someone or someone trying to build a dynamic with you. So it's very important to not get lazy in your communication and to slow down. I think the biggest factor of why I wanted to make it the title Empowering Black Women is because we do not slow down. We are juggling 77 things at a time, and it is not effective. We have this belief of multitasking and touching everything and thinking that that's being effective when really we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so I really wanted to start out with the meditation to force you guys, in a sense, to recognize the difference of going straight from classes presentation to go into something else and seeing the difference in how your body feels in that. And I know there were some of you that were like, okay, when is this going to be over? Okay, there's silence. So is it done yet? Opening and blinking your eyes. And I get it. Because when I started to meditate in the beginning, when she would ask me to go from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes, I would go nuts. Because I was like, if you start at my head, I know you're going to take me all the way to my toes. And how long is this going to take? And hurry up, because I'm trying to check this off my list and going. I started to realize how ineffective I was when I was moving so quickly and how that also was going into my language. Because what I've learned from a supervisor a long time ago is that life is a parallel process and you take you everywhere you go. So if you're doing this to yourself, you're probably doing that in your sessions, you're probably doing that in class, you're probably doing that with your family. So when are you ever really showing up? Because we'll have this misconception of, no, I only do that when I'm not interested in something. No, I only do that over here. No, you take you everywhere you go. So be intentional with you, take time with you, and then we'll start to see how we take time with others and we're more intentional with others. And my whole hope as a therapist is to create a positive impact, not only on myself, so that I can learn how to contribute back to society in a more positive way. Because when I'm healthy, I learn how to be healthy for those around me.
Rochelle, I just wanted to maybe close off in the way with the same comment I started it, which is when you see somebody make an effort to be very clear about what they think and who they are, that's incredibly influential. And I think you definitely showed that tonight.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Kenny asked, is it okay to say these phrases and yet elaborate afterwards? I'm not fully sure of your question, so I'm going to do the best I can in answering that. If you're meaning, when I talk about the reframing, to say good and then just leave it up in the air, you want to continue to be intentional and restate that appropriate word that you're trying to address. And it's okay to take time and let someone know, I'm thinking or I'm processing. And we struggle to do that because we also struggle to be vulnerable, because we find that as a sense of weakness to take time to slow down. But I want to help reframe that slowing down is strength. So I hope that answered your question, Kenny.